You tell them everything, the dreams, the doubts, the wounds still healing. They listen closer than anyone ever has, and yet that closeness might be the most dangerous thing in your life right now. Machiavelli understood something most people learn too late. The person best positioned to destroy you is never the obvious enemy. It is the one you already let past every wall, the one holding your secrets like loaded weapons. There are 7 signs your best friend is actually your hidden enemy. Most people recognize them only after the damage is done. You are going to recognize them right now. Niccolo Machiavelli did not learn about betrayal from books. He learned it from watching men die because they trusted the wrong advisor. For 14 years he served inside the political machinery of Florence, not as a philosopher sitting safely in a library, but as a diplomat navigating rooms where a single misplaced word could end a career or a life. He watched princes fall, not to armies, not to enemies they could name, to the men standing closest to them. The advisors, the confidants, the friends. He documented a pattern so consistent it became the foundation of modern political psychology. The most dangerous person in any system is never the declared opponent. It is the trusted insider whose interests have quietly diverged from yours, but whose position depends on you never realizing it. He wrote one line that contains the entire architecture of what we are about to examine. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. He was not writing about enemies. He was writing about the specific danger of people who appear to be allies, people whose public behavior and private behavior run on entirely different operating systems. And he was writing about what happens to you when you cannot tell the difference. This is not about toxic people. That word has been stretched so thin it means almost nothing now. This is about a specific, psychologically precise category of person that has existed in every human social structure since hierarchies began. The hidden enemy. Not hidden because they are absent. Hidden because they are closer than anyone else. The hidden enemy is the person whose emotional or social equilibrium depends on your limitation, not your destruction. That would be too visible, too easy to identify. Your limitation. The specific, calibrated suppression of your growth to a range they can tolerate without feeling threatened by the comparison. They do not need you to fail. They need you to stay within a bandwidth that does not make them feel small. And when you begin to exceed that bandwidth, when your growth starts to create a visible gap between where you are heading and where they have stopped, something activates. Not hostility, never hostility, something far more effective. Concern, care. The specific weaponized warmth of a person who needs you to believe they are protecting you while they are systematically interrupting your momentum. Modern psychology has a term for part of this dynamic. It is called covert relational aggression, harm delivered through the relationship itself rather than against it. The weapon is not conflict. The weapon is closeness. The closer they are, the more precisely they can calibrate the interference, and the less likely you are to recognize it as interference at all. Because the single most effective place to hide an attack is inside an act of love. Machiavelli saw this pattern operate at the highest levels of power. But it does not require a throne or a court. It requires only 2 things: access and motive. Your best friend has the access. The question is whether they have the motive. And the 7 signs I'm about to show you will answer that question with a precision you will not be able to unsee. The reason this category of person survives undetected is not because they are brilliant. It is because your brain is designed to protect the classification it has already made. Once you have categorized someone as safe, as an ally, as a friend, your mind actively filters incoming information to preserve that category. Psychologists call this confirmation bias operating inside attachment. You do not see the contradictions because your brain is literally discarding data that threatens the relationship classification. Every private diminishment gets filed under honest feedback from someone who cares. Every subtle sabotage gets reframed as their personality. Every pattern of interference gets explained away as your own sensitivity. You are not naive. You are neurologically compromised by trust itself. And that is exactly the environment the hidden enemy requires to operate. Not your stupidity, your loyalty. Tell me in the comments, how long has someone had that kind of access to you? And when was the first time something they said in private did not match what they showed in public? Write it below. You do not need the full picture yet, just name the feeling. Subscribe if you want to keep going. The 7 signs start now. In front of other people, they are your loudest advocate. They call you talented. They reference your wins. They position themselves visibly as the friend who is proud to know you. You have noticed this. You have valued it. You have probably told yourself it is one of the things that makes this friendship irreplaceable. But there is another version of this person. The version that exists when the audience disappears. When it is just the two of you. When nobody is watching who might judge them for their response. Something shifts. The celebration quiets. And in its place arrives something else. Something dressed as honesty. I told everyone about it, but I just want to make sure you are being realistic. I am proud of you, but you have to admit the timing was lucky. I support you, but you remember what happened last time. Each sentence has a public face and a private function. The public face is concern. The private function is recalibration, pulling you back to a position they are comfortable with after the public performance has already purchased the credibility of being seen as your supporter. Social psychology calls this performative solidarity. The deliberate public display of support that functions not as genuine celebration but as reputation management, while the actual work of diminishment happens in private, where no one can observe the contradiction. The test is devastatingly simple. Share a win with them when no one else is around, then watch, not what they say, what changes, the energy, the enthusiasm, the specific quality of their engagement when there is no audience to perform for. The response they give when nobody is watching is the honest one. Every time. It was funny the first time, maybe even the second. The callback to the moment you failed publicly. The impression of your nervous habit. The story about the thing that embarrassed you 3 years ago. But here is the question you have never asked aloud. Why does that specific material keep returning? Not occasionally, with reliable frequency. In groups, in private, in moments where you are doing well, and the joke lands like a small, surgical interruption to your current momentum. You dismiss it as their sense of humor. You laugh along because not laughing would make you the problem. That is the mechanism. Humor is the most socially protected weapon in the human arsenal. If you react, you are oversensitive. If you do not react, the content lands. If you laugh along, you have participated in your own diminishment. The attacker wins regardless of your response, which means it is not really humor at all. It is a precision instrument wearing the disguise of humor. Every time your weakness enters the room through a joke, a social record is being maintained. The people present are being anchored to a version of you that exists below your current position. Your progress is being quietly undermined by someone who keeps reminding the room of a past you have been working to outgrow. That is not comedy, that is maintenance. And it is being performed by the person you trust most. You call them with something exciting, a new opportunity, a decision you are proud of, a risk that is starting to pay off, and within 90 seconds the conversation has shifted from celebration to caution. Not dramatic caution, not do not do this, something quieter. That is amazing, I just do not want you to get hurt. I am happy for you, but have you thought about what happens if it does not work out? I love that for you, I am just worried. Each statement begins with validation and ends with a break. The validation is the price of entry, the thing they say so the break does not register as resistance. And the break is always framed as care. Always. Because care is the one motivation you cannot argue against without sounding ungrateful. Over time, you stop calling with good news, not consciously. You do not make a decision. You just notice that the excitement drains faster when you share it with them. So you share less, and you tell yourself that is maturity, that you are becoming more private, more self-contained. But you are not becoming more private. You are being trained, conditioned, slowly to associate your own momentum with the discomfort of their response, until sharing your wins feels like a cost rather than a joy. A genuine friend's first response to your good news is unqualified. The concern comes later, if at all, and it comes from a place of having already celebrated fully. The hidden enemy reverses this order. The concern comes first. The celebration is the afterthought. Track their availability across the seasons of your life, not their words, their presence. When things are falling apart, when you are struggling, hurting, confused, they are there, immediately, reliably, with warmth and patience and the specific energy of someone who is deeply invested in your well-being. But when things are working, when you are building, growing, succeeding, something shifts. They become harder to reach, slower to respond, their enthusiasm becomes muted. Their schedule becomes suddenly full. They are not avoiding you, they are avoiding your success. Because your failure is a context in which they feel comfortable, needed, and relatively positioned above you. Your success is a context that threatens all three. This is the sign that reveals the operating system underneath the friendship. A person who is genuinely invested in you feels energized by your wins and concerned by your losses. The hidden enemy feels the opposite, settled by your losses and destabilized by your wins. And because they show up so reliably during your worst moments, you have classified them as loyal. But loyalty that only appears when you are down is not loyalty. It is positioning. You mention a goal. Within days, they have a version of the same goal. You start a project. They start something suspiciously adjacent. You develop a new interest. They develop an opinion about why that interest is overrated. And if you ever name it, if you ever say it feels like you are competing with me, the response is immediate and absolute. They are not competing. They have no idea what you're talking about. You are being paranoid. You are being self-centered to think everything is about you. That denial is the confirmation. A person who is not competing does not need to deny it with that level of force. The intensity of the denial is proportional to the accuracy of the observation. Machiavelli documented this pattern in every court he entered. The advisor who mirrors the prince's ambitions is not expressing shared vision. He is ensuring he is never outpaced. The imitation is not flattery. It is surveillance dressed as solidarity. The hidden enemy competes because your growth is a measurement they cannot stop taking. And they deny the competition because admitting it would expose the entire structure of the friendship, a structure built not on mutual support, but on mutual limitation. This is the sign that requires the most honesty from you, because it operates with the material you gave them voluntarily. You told them about your fear of not being enough. And right before a major opportunity, they mention casually how competitive the field is. You told them about your body image struggles. And at the exact moment you're feeling confident, they make an offhand comment about health. You told them about the relationship that broke you. And they reference it right when something new is beginning. The information is not being stored. It is being cataloged, filed under useful, retrieved when the timing serves a function. And each retrieval is wrapped in plausible deniability. I was just thinking about you. I did not mean anything by it. You know I only bring it up because I care. The hidden enemy does not create your wounds. They simply know exactly where each one is located, and they press them, gently, deniably, strategically, at the moments when you are most vulnerable to their effect. This is the most intimate form of betrayal. Not because the information is used against you, but because you are the one who provided it. And recognizing the pattern means recognizing that the safety you felt when you shared it may never have existed. This is not a sign you observe, it's a sign you feel. After you spend time with them, a conversation, a dinner, an afternoon, there is a specific feeling, not anger, not sadness, something harder to name, a slight deflation, a quiet doubt that was not there before, a sense that you are somehow less certain about the thing you were certain about before you saw them. You cannot point to anything they said. You cannot identify a single moment that was wrong, but the cumulative effect is undeniable. You walked in feeling capable. You walk out feeling uncertain. That feeling is the most reliable data point you have. Because the hidden enemy's most sophisticated skill is not any single behavior. It is the atmosphere they create. A climate of subtle, deniable diminishment that leaves you feeling less than you were without ever being able to explain why. A friendship that consistently makes you feel smaller is not a friendship with a few rough edges. It is a system producing exactly the result it was designed to produce. Your emotional state after contact is the truest measure of any relationship. Not their words, not their promises, not their public performance. The way you feel when the interaction is over. Trust that feeling. It has been trying to tell you something for a long time. All 7 signs share a single root structure, and understanding it changes everything about how you see the people closest to you. The hidden enemy does not operate from hatred. They operate from threat. Specifically, the threat your growth poses to their self-concept. As long as you remain at a level they can comfortably stand beside, the friendship functions. The moment you begin to exceed that level, the moment your trajectory starts to separate from theirs, a survival mechanism activates. Not a conscious decision, not a calculated plan, a psychological reflex. The same way your hand pulls back from a flame before your brain has registered the heat. Their interference is not malice, it is self-preservation, and that is precisely what makes it so difficult to confront, because they genuinely believe they are acting from care. The sabotage is unconscious. The motive is invisible even to them. Jung described this as the shadow operating through relationship. The parts of ourselves we cannot face, our envy, our fear of inadequacy, our terror of being left behind, do not disappear when we refuse to look at them. They express themselves sideways, through humor, through concern, through the subtle, deniable behaviors that allow us to limit another person without ever having to admit, even to ourselves, what we are doing. The hidden enemy is not a monster. They are a person whose unexamined shadow has turned your friendship into the container for their unprocessed fear. And that reframe, from villain to unconscious, is not a reason to forgive and stay. It is the reason the situation is even more dangerous than it appears. Because a person who does not know they are harming you cannot stop. A person whose sabotage is invisible to themselves will never choose to change. The mechanism will continue as long as the proximity remains. Machiavelli understood this with surgical clarity. He wrote that the most dangerous advisor is not the one who lies deliberately, but the one who has convinced himself his lies are truth. The hidden enemy is dangerous precisely because they believe their own performance. They believe they are your friend, and that belief makes them immune to the kind of self-examination that could stop the harm. If this reframe has shifted something in you, if you can feel the difference between seeing this person as a villain and seeing them as someone whose shadow runs the friendship, alike puts this in front of someone else who needs to see it right now. Here's what happens when you finally name it. The pattern you have been feeling, the deflation, the muted celebrations, the jokes that land wrong, the warnings disguised as care, stops being a collection of disconnected incidents and becomes a coherent structure, a system you can finally see from outside. And the moment you see it from outside, it loses its primary power. Because the hidden enemy's greatest weapon was never any single behavior. It was your inability to name the pattern. The moment the pattern has a name, the spell breaks. Not the relationship, not the history, not the love you genuinely felt. The spell, the specific enchantment that kept you interpreting harm as care, sabotage as support, limitation as loyalty. This is not about confrontation. It is not about dramatic exits or angry conversations. It is about the quiet, private moment where you stop explaining away the feeling and start listening to it. The feeling was never wrong. You were just told, repeatedly, subtly, by the very person causing it, that it was your problem. It was never your problem. Start with observation, not confrontation, not distance, observation. For the next 30 days, keep a private record of how you feel after every significant interaction with the person you suspect. Not what they said, how you felt afterward. Write 3 words maximum: smaller, uncertain, drained, or energized, seen, steady. Do not analyze, do not justify, do not explain their behavior, just record your state. After 30 entries, read them in sequence. The pattern will speak for itself with a clarity no single conversation could provide. This is not paranoia. This is data collection from the only instrument sensitive enough to detect the hidden enemy's frequency, your own nervous system. Choose a piece of good news, something real, something you are genuinely excited about. Share it with 3 people. One of them is the person in question. The other 2 are people you trust but are less close to. Then compare, not the words, the energy, the speed of the celebration, the presence or absence of qualifications. the feeling in your body during and after each conversation. If the person who knows you best responds with less enthusiasm than people who know you less, that asymmetry is not a coincidence. It is a signal. The people with less access to your vulnerabilities have less reason to manage your growth. The person with full access has the most reason and the most tools. Do not confront, do not explain, do not give them the information that you are pulling back, because information is the currency they have always used, and providing more of it only restocks their arsenal. Instead, reduce. Share less. Respond with warmth, but without depth. Let the conversations become shorter without making them hostile. Create distance through presence. Be there, but stop handing over the interior, and watch what happens. A genuine friend will notice the shift and ask with real curiosity what has changed. The hidden enemy will either not notice, because they were never tracking your well-being, only your information, or they will escalate. They will push harder for access. They will frame your privacy as distance, your boundaries as coldness, your growth as abandonment. That response tells you everything. A person who respects your boundaries is a friend. A person who panics at your boundaries is someone who needed what your openness provided, and what it provided was not connection, it was control. You handed someone a map to every room inside you, and for a long time you believed that handing it over was what made the friendship real. But the map was never theirs. It was always yours. The rooms are yours. The fears, the failures, the ambitions, the wounds, all of it belongs to you. And the act of reclaiming that map, of deciding who deserves access and who has forfeited it through what they did with the access they were given, that is not betrayal. That is sovereignty. You are not losing a friend. You are recovering a self. Machiavelli wrote his most famous work, not from a position of power, but from exile. Removed from the courts that had defined his life, stripped of influence, sitting alone in a farmhouse outside Florence, writing letters to the dead. And from that exile, he saw what proximity had always prevented him from seeing. That the men who had surrounded him were not all allies. That closeness is not the same as loyalty. That the people with the most access are not always the people with the best intentions. He did not write out of bitterness. He wrote out of clarity. The clarity that comes only after you have stepped far enough back to see the entire pattern. You are standing at that distance now. And what you see, the 7 signs, the mechanism beneath them, the feeling you have carried without a name, is not a reason for despair. It is the beginning of a precision you have never had before. The precision to know who belongs close to you and who has been using that closeness as a position. The map is yours. The rooms are yours. And from this moment forward, you decide who enters. If you want to keep seeing with this kind of clarity, subscribe. There is more of this waiting. The people who know you best should be the people who make you feel most like yourself. If they do not, the map was never in the right hands. Thank you for being here. I will see you in the next one.